This is the Podcast Express, and we're talking to whoever's listening out there. You're listening to 5 Minutes of Trouble, the only podcast on the internet that discusses the John Carpenter film Big Trouble in Little China 5 minutes at a time. I'm Josh Horowitz from the Wing Kong Exchange at www.wingkong.net, and my co-host in this wild ride is producer, actor, filmmaker, and fellow Big Trouble aficionado, Brett Stillo. Hi, Brett. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Josh. Thanks for the introduction. You forgot to mention I'm also a collector of rare cheeses. But I try to stay busy, as we all do. But thanks for inviting me on this wild ride.
Absolutely. This is going to be quite a wild ride that we're going to be going on. I first met with Brett Stillo through our friends over at the Indiana Jones Minute podcast. I was able to contact Pete Mummert, and he got me in touch with Brett, and we are starting up this brand new Big Trouble in Little China Minute podcast, and it's exciting.
Yes. One of the great cult movies, one of John Carpenter's best movies, and a movie that really seems in the past couple of years to really be exploding in its popularity. It's always been a cult favorite, but now, they're talking about the remake, and this movie's really, really happening.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's a lot of talk about new stuff going on, but we are ready to get started with our 5 minutes of trouble. First off, for those of you who are not familiar with this type of format, it started out with Pete, the retailer, and Alex Robinson from Star Wars Minute, where they decided to explore that film 1 minute at a time, so about 120 episodes to discuss that film. We're not going to take quite that same approach. For our Trouble Excursion, we're going to do 5 minutes at a time. So we're going to do one episode a week, a 5-minute discussion that will probably last anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes, and we're hoping to do about 20 episodes to get through the whole film. So that's what we're going to try, and hopefully it works.
I know what you Movie Minute fans are thinking out there.
Yeah.
5 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
You may want to buckle in. You may get whiplash. Hang on.
And who are we? Why are we trying this crazy thing? Well, I can tell you who I am. I'm Josh Horowitz. As I mentioned, I've been running the Wing Kong Exchange, which is one of the major. Well, I don't know if it's really major. It's one of the bigger Big Trouble in Little China fan sites on the internet. I've been running it on and off for over 20 years now.
It's major. It's major. I've talked to friends who are Big Trouble fans, and you're major. You're allowed. You've earned it. 20 years. You kept the fire going.
Well, it's been a fun ride on that one. And I've just been listening to a lot of these minute-by-minute podcasts on my commute to work, and I thought it would be a lot of fun to be able to do one of these for Big Trouble in Little China. And so that's why I decided to try to do this. And Brett, why don't you tell our great audience a little about yourself?
Well, first and foremost, I love movies. I've worked on a few. I've made a few. I like to talk about them, write about them. So podcasts are just an ideal way to keep me out of trouble. Kind of getting my feet wet in podcasting. I was just on the Indiana Jones Minute just the other day. Those guys say hello, and so I'm just excited to have a really exciting and dynamic medium to talk about a very unique and interesting and exciting movie.
It certainly is unique.
There is only one Big Trouble in Little China, and I mean that in the best sense. This is a movie. Well, here's a little bit of trivia because Josh, when did you first see Big Trouble in Little China? What was your introduction?
I actually did not see it in theaters. I saw it for the first time back in 1987. I actually saw it in a hotel room. On a trip where I developed chickenpox, and I was confined to the hotel room for a week, and they had HBO, and they were showing Fraggle Rock and Big Trouble in Little China, and I ate both of them up quite a bit. And when I first saw it there, it instantly became one of my favorite films, and have just loved it over the years. I've had several chances to see it through midnight showings on the big screen. It was quite an experience, but I didn't get to see it during its original theatrical run.
Wow. So now whenever you get sick, do you have like some kind of a psychosomatic connection? Like, I need to watch Big Trouble in Little China.
Well, I do remember when I was still in like junior high school days, whenever I was sick at home. It was either pulling out an old VHS tape of Return of the Jedi or Big Trouble in Little China. So it has some really good memories from the past, for me at least.
Chicken soup for the soul. Chicken soup for the soul. Well, let's see. Yeah, I actually did have the distinction, if you will, of seeing it on, I believe, opening night in, what was that, July 2nd or July 1st, 1986?
And was this in San Francisco then? That's where you're at, right?
Yeah, I'm based in San Francisco. Josh is down in LA. This was actually up in Marin County. I was living there for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And those of you who are in the North Bay, I believe we saw it at the old Marin Cinema, Cinema One, where many a great 80s movie played. And, definitely looking forward to it. Definitely remember the trailer. But here's the twist, and we'll talk more about this. First time I saw Big Trouble in Little China, I didn't get it.
What?
I was coming in. I kind of took the bait of the studio, like, hey, this is going to be another Raiders. And yeah, Kurt Russell, he's a wacky, lovable hero. There he is on the middle of the poster, that wry grin. And, if you know this movie, if you love this movie, Kurt Russell's there, and we love Kurt Russell. We love Jack Burton. But is Jack Burton really the hero?
Yeah, no, they wanted the audience to think that, but as we'll discuss in our minutes to come, not quite exactly how it turned out.
Nope. So I was a little confused, and I will say by the end of the movie, I'd kind of figured out, oh, this is what's going on, and I loved it by the end. But there was I would say your second act, I was a little frustrated. I was like, why does he keep goofing up? Oh, wait, this guy's an idiot. Well, yeah.
But that's part of the big appeal of this film that many of the people outside of the theatrical release really picked up on. It's what's made this movie a cult classic, and I think that's a good segue into the film itself. Should we get started?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Minute 1 begins with the 20th Century Fox logo, and it ends with the credit for production designer John J. Lloyd as the Pork Chop Express arrives at the dock. So yeah, Big Trouble in Little China. It's all beginning. Yeah.
It's an interesting place to start.
Yeah.
Because this movie starts in a very different place from where it ends in terms of tone and the look. One thing I never noticed before is, the very first minute, we see that iconic 20th Century Fox logo.
That's right.
But one thing I had never really thought of is the fanfare isn't there, the familiar Fox fanfare.
That's true. I never really thought about that. Instead, you hear John Carpenter's moody synth music sort of setting up this Chinese ghost story, as it were.
Yeah, total Chinese ghost story, Josh. And, it kind of, a little bell rung in my head that I remembered as a kid when I would see a Fox movie, in the 70s and 80s, you would get the fanfare for Star Wars, of course, but, some of the lighter movies, maybe this is some kind of big blockbuster, a more serious movie by Fox, they would not have the fanfare. It was sort of very, you want to be taken seriously. So that kind of struck me. You'd think this would be a movie as you were just saying, you never noticed that before. Yeah, you just assume you're going to get that fanfare and we're off and running. It's kind of a cold start. You have the famous logo, but then it's just, like you said, moody music, and I think you hear the lawyer talking over it. So it's, it's like I said, it starts in a very different tone.
Yeah, and as most people will know from just listening to some of the DVD commentary, the Blu-ray stuff, that this wasn't the original intro for the film. This was actually something that apparently was inserted at the insistence of some of the Fox executives. Apparently, it started originally with just the Pork Chop Express driving over the Golden Gate Bridge into San Francisco, introducing Jack Burton. And I guess the executives thought that this was something that wasn't showing Jack Burton as heroic enough. They wanted this film to be something where, Jack Burton was going to be the next, Indiana Jones. And so they needed to have this sort of moody, lawyer intro and really set up Jack as this hero, which is ironic because he's not really the hero, as we'll find out from these upcoming minutes.
Yeah, it really is a setup. I kind of took the bait that Fox, I think, was hoping that, this is going to be a Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of movie, which, in retrospect, it is kind of like closer to Raiders than a lot of other movies, but
it sounds like that's what they were shooting for, but
that's what
not exactly quite the same thing.
No. It's John Carpenter. He always, if you look at the movies of, say, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, John Carpenter's movies are always a little bit to the left. He's always going like, you guys go that way. I'll take this shortcut here, or I'll take this, I know this great Chinese restaurant in an alley. I'll go this way. So this is just yet another example of, I think this is his lighthearted comedy adventure, but he just has all these great twists. But I was, from some of the pre-publicity and like this prologue, you're thinking, okay, this is going to be, like I said, a very different movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you'll notice that it has a very noir-esque type of opening. I mean, you have the vertical blind effect, the shadows going across Egg. You're not sure, who is this guy? Who's the lawyer? What is this Jack Burton that they're talking about? They make it sound very epic, but it's not a bad setup. I do like it. It does have a very different feel, like you mentioned, from how it is by the end of the film.
Yeah, but, I mean this is, like you said, it's noir. It's a police procedural. You're thinking you're in for a darker ride.
Mm-hmm.
The way Egg's saying, you don't know what you're getting into, and he's being very foreboding.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea of the madcap stuff that's coming,
and then they start talking about stuff like green flame, and so you kind of think, well, wait a minute, okay, this isn't quite exactly your typical type of detective interrogation.
No, it's not. That's a good point. Well, then of course, it starts to go a little bit south or in a different direction, whatever direction magic takes you.
Yeah, I do remember the first time that I saw it, and they're talking about magic, and I'm like, okay, it's kind of a cool setup. But then you see the lightning, just a little bit, and that was the first laugh moment that I had. It's like, oh, this is cool. This is going to be different. And he's like, yeah, that's how it begins, very small. And I knew that, okay, this is going to be a different type of ride.
Yeah. What occurs to me also is this is very interesting because you saw it on HBO as a kid. I saw it in a theater as pretty much as a young adult. So very different perspectives. And what I'm thinking back to that must have been exciting for you. Nowadays there's movies about magic everywhere. Magic is almost, it's a genre practically. You have Harry Potter movies, and the list goes on and on. I'm thinking, there weren't that many movies that had, say, lightning bolts coming out of your fingers back then. So that would have been kind of a little more.
That's true. Maybe Return of the Jedi. I'm thinking the Emperor, but aside from that, you didn't see too much lightning effect.
Lightning. Yeah. So no wonder they got ILM guys.
Yeah.
Right. Can do blue lightning as long as as the day is long.
And I think back then it was probably animated in, traditional hand cell type animation on top of it. But it looks cool.
Yeah, and that's kind of, that's a very good point. And that's one thing I think what makes Big Trouble look so cool is, you have old school effects. Yeah, they have a bit of a neon glow. They don't look, quote unquote, perfect like digital.
Mm-hmm.
That little lightning effect looks like some kind of matted, or you just said animated effect. There's a little bit of a warmth there to it. It doesn't, it doesn't look, quote unquote, realistic by today's standards, but it's very eye-catching.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they end up doing that remake with The Rock. Are they going to redo this scene? Is it going to be all CG? What direction are they going to take with this sort of thing?
I'm already afraid. I'm like, when the remakes, when the sequels come out, the reboots, I get excited as any other geek, but at the same time, I'm like, no, just leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Well, when that thing, if it does come out, I'll be happy to see it. It's not something that I'm totally, really, really excited to see. But I mean, it'd just be fun to be able to experience some form of Big Trouble in Little China again.
Yeah.
I mean, the neat thing is that now this is actually the 30th anniversary year of the film. It came out in 86, July of 1986.
Yeah.
And it, I think the movie still holds up. I mean, it certainly has a lot of puppety things and, there's some animated things, but, I think it's still a great film, and we will be discussing quite a bit of it.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that you may very well be the world's greatest living authority on this movie.
Well,
I mean, we can, we can definitely wait and see if anybody else comes out there who can claim to be. But you've, as you said, 20 years of your life focusing on this movie. So I think you've earned the title if you want it. You don't have to take it, but
well, I'll give a little bit of a backstory on just what my background is with Big Trouble in Little China as the episodes go forward.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a fun film. I'm not the type that sees it a lot. I mean, I'm sure I've probably seen it, more than a dozen times, but it's just, I know enough of certain lines and certain scenes that I can quote them at will.
Yeah. It seems to me, that's why I kind of segued to that. Does it seem to you like there is a real big resurgence happening, like maybe in the last 2 years? It was a cult film when it came out. I think it was destined to be a cult film, but so it's always had its little niche following, but it seems like it's really taking off. Like, for example, up here in San Francisco, just a couple months ago, they had at the old Great Star Theater in Chinatown, they had this huge Big Trouble night, and they had like live acts mixed with the movie. It was and the show was sold out. In fact, I think they added a second night due to popular demand. So it just seems like, and I've been hearing from folks that if they show Big Trouble at a revival house, people get very excited about it. So this might be kind of a crucial time when it is becoming a cult legend.
Yeah, it does seem like that. I mean, this is a film that certainly has taken off more after it left theaters than it has any time during. It's always been a movie that I feel has been very successful anytime it's shown at one of those midnight type venues. I think I've probably seen it on the big screen in one of those midnight things at least 3 times over the years. Cool. And I keep getting contacts from people all over the world really telling me about when there are going to be screenings of Big Trouble in Little China. I used to mention it on my site. But as far as lately, I mean, yeah, with the announcement of the remake and talk of that certainly put the film on a lot of people's radars, definitely lately. And then I want to actually make a shout out to some of the stuff that's going to be coming in the next couple of months. There was an article that had just come out in Entertainment Weekly where they're talking about how there's 2 books and there's going to be a crossover comic coming. The Official Art of Big Trouble in Little China is a book that's coming out in November of 2016. Prior to that, actually, it's coming out this month that we're recording it. The Official Making of Big Trouble in Little China is going to be a book as well. It's coming out this August 2016. And then there's going to be a crossover Big Trouble in Little China and Escape from New York comic book that's coming out in October. So we have 3 really neat things that are coming. This is stuff that's over 30 years in the making. So these are exciting little things that are coming up. So there's going to be a lot more trouble.
We could say, there is big trouble in Big Trouble.
Indeed.
Things are really rolling. So I think it's, I think it's wonderful, that, a film is, so again, I can kind of think back to, in my youth, there was a time when a movie like It's a Wonderful Life was just something on TV. And then at some point, it's like a fine wine. Suddenly that became like, a classic. Mm-hmm. And it's, there was, that's a movie now it's spoken with reverence. Same thing, Christmas Story. Mm-hmm. That one is now kind of has a, an aura. And I think that's cool. I think it's happening with Little Trouble in Big China.
Little Trouble.
How many times am I going to say that over the next 18 episodes?
Well, hopefully we won't get in trouble for that.
No, hopefully we won't.
Ha.
Hopefully we won't. But
But back to the minutes. I thought I'd give a little bit of trivia. I did a little bit of research on some of the actors that we see in these minutes. The actor who plays the lawyer, his name is Jerry Hardin. His credits include The Firm. He played Deep Throat on The X-Files, and on Star Trek: The Next Generation, he played Mark Twain. I remember seeing him in The Firm. I never really watched The X-Files. But he's still doing a lot of stuff, and this was yet another thing for his portfolio.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, you know, this classic sort of character actor awareness that, you know, I'd seen Jerry Hardin in a bunch of things, but I'd never put two and two together. Oh yeah, he's the lawyer in the beginning of Big Trouble. Because yeah, Jerry Hardin often plays that kind of character. You know, the kind of, you know, disagreeable bureaucrat. Yeah, he's the lawyer. You know, because he's not a real friendly character in this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's intention. You know, it's like you're in bit. You know, he's saying to Egg, hey, you're in a lot of trouble here, and I can help you out. And you know,
he actually does say trouble. You know, there's the title of the film right there in the first couple of minutes.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the interesting thing is he never shows up again. He's just there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's Jerry Hardin.
Yeah.
And then as far as the other character, well, certainly we see Egg Shen for the first time. The actor Victor Wong. And, you know, he was mostly known for doing a lot of martial arts style films. I have a note here that his slightly drooping face was, he didn't have a stroke. He was actually a result of something called Bell's palsy.
Oh, okay.
Where just part of his face is unfortunately like frozen. But it didn't affect him any other way. You know, he sort of had that distinct look.
Yeah.
The other note I have about here, unfortunately, he died in 2001. He died on September 12th, 2001, so the day after 9/11. A little interesting thing about that. Yeah. I just remember when I was doing updates on my Big Trouble in Little China site, I heard about that around that same time, and so I was able to find, you know, like a little obituary, and there was a poster of him. I guess, you know, how he looked at that point. I mean, he didn't look too different. You know,
no.
It was very, very distinct look, Egg Shen. But we'll certainly get quite a bit of him. He's got some very memorable lines. The part where he will do his battle with Lo Pan coming up, spoilers, is quite something to watch. But we'll get there. And then the final actor. Well, let's first talk about the final actor who's really mentioned in this, and that's Kurt Russell. That's Jack Burton himself, and he makes one of the more iconic appearances where he channels his John Wayne to excellence with his opening monologue on the CB. And you mentioned something interesting. We talked offline before about Rio Bravo. Maybe you can mention that again.
Yeah, just, you know, it's what did I his, you know, Jack's dialogue is definitely John Wayne, and I think the movie that John Carpenter was pulling from is Rio Bravo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we were talking about that because of the original screenplay for this was supposed to be a Western, an 1880s cowboy script. That was the one that Gary Goldman and David Weinstein had put together.
Yeah.
And I guess that was similar to Rio Bravo, which I haven't seen, unfortunately.
It's I think you'd have an interesting time because you know, in a sense, John Wayne is Dennis Dunn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's because Rio Bravo is a siege movie. It's very similar to, you know, John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13.
That's right.
You know, lone lawman. He's guarding a prisoner, and he's surrounded. He's under siege, and he assembles a ragtag group of local people to help him. You know, there's a drunken deputy played by Dean Martin, who's kind of the sidekick. And so in a sense, yeah, I mean, you're reversing the characters. Dennis Dunn is the sheriff, and and Kurt Russell is kind of like Dean Martin, although he's kind of talking more like John Wayne. But yeah, it's interesting dynamics and interesting dialogue, and there is definitely quite a bit of DNA of Rio Bravo in Big Trouble in Little China, and I think there's it's all about Howard Hawks, the director of Rio Bravo, who's hugely influential on John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do get to watch Rio Bravo, I think I mentioned this. Carpenter does the commentary, and so it's one master talking about another master. So
nice.
Yeah, you don't have to see it, but it is a little slow by today's standards. But I think you could get a kick out of little lights will go off, and hey, yeah, okay, I kind of see that. I see where that's coming from.
Rio Bravo, yeah. Now I'll have to check
Rio
that
Bravo.
one out.
But yeah, wise, yeah, Kurt Russell is, yeah, he's channeling John Wayne.
Mm-hmm. And but yeah, just a little bit about the original version of the script. So yeah, supposedly it was supposed to be an 1880s cowboy script, and Goldman and Weinstein they brought it over to Taft Entertainment, and apparently, while they liked it, 20th Century Fox wanted to get a rewrite of everything to a modern setting, and they asked Goldman and they asked Weinstein if they could go ahead and do it. Goldman refused. He wanted to really stick to his guns, so to speak. And in this case, Fox went over their heads and they brought in W.D. Richter of Buckaroo Banzai fame to try to do the rewrite. He was quite the rewriter at the time during the 80s, and it no longer resembled very much of the original script from what I've been hearing.
Now, same here. Josh, do you know, does that original script exist somewhere? Is that possible to track that down, or is that, either locked away in a vault somewhere, or is it burned long ago? Because it would be interesting to see, this is so common in Hollywood. Yeah. I don't realize, what starts off as, a family comedy becomes a dark revenge movie. And how we get there, it's always interesting.
Yeah. In all my years collecting various Big Trouble paraphernalia, I do have the script, but it's a sort of early draft, not the shooting draft version of the W.D. Richter version of the script. I've never actually seen the 1880s cowboy one. It must exist, but it's probably not something that was widely distributed. Yeah, it would be interesting to read it, though.
Yeah, because that always interests me when, may the wings of liberty never lose a feather. When did that come into the script? There's
actually the interesting thing I happen to know about that particular line.
We should wait though. We should.
Oh yeah, we'll save it. That's coming up.
Now I really want to get whatever episode that's going to be.
Yeah. That's later. That's a huge buzz scene. Okay.
Oh yeah, love it. Yeah, and by then we are definitely in that universe. But yeah, it's an interesting tonal change, because what starts off you're thinking is going to be another dark, gritty, intense John Carpenter kind of movie. Kurt Russell's just coming in with all this crazy energy.
Oh yeah.
You can feel like there's. Even when you first see the Pork Chop Express, it's raining, it's gray.
Mm-hmm.
You're still thinking, okay, this is going to be some kind of a much grittier adventure. But yeah, then that was, again, 1986. Like, I noticed, like, hey, he's talking kind of, is he drunk? What's with all the, all these, here's where the movie starts to turn. And that's, I'm thinking about his speech about, when you're in a bar and a guy 8 feet tall comes up to you.
Yeah, have you paid your dues? I still find, if there's an opportunity to use some of those lines, it usually comes from one of his CB monologues. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And I dig the sandwich that he eats. I remember when I was a kid that, if I ever had a sandwich that was that big, maybe from Subway or something, I would just take a really big bite and think it was just like that scene.
Yeah, the sandwich in my mind gets bigger. Like every time I see the movie, it's like, and I forgot where the sandwich comes in. the beginning is, as you can hear my voice, I'm stammering, and it's a little jarring,
Yeah.
because you're, like I said, 1 minute you're in a dimly lit lawyer's office, it's smoky, and then the next thing you're in a truck, and I've never been able to figure out, like, when he's talking about your dues and stuff, is this actually a flashback, like on the stormy, when you think about where the movie ends and where the movie begins, is he? I think, in an early viewing, I thought, well, is Jack, alone on the road, and is he on the CB radio just telling, about his adventure to anybody out there who'd listen?
That actually just reminded me of something. I have the screenplay. I should really dust that thing out and try to look at some of this old stuff. But I seem to recall that they mentioned somewhere in the screenplay, like he had just gotten divorced or something.
Right.
So, I don't know. Maybe there's some relation to that.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one again.
Yeah, but it's just there's a little bit of a time and place. It's a little confusing. Like, when we first meet Jack, is he driving to San Francisco? Is this the adventure starting, or is this? Because the end of the movie, again, I just want to get to the end.
Maybe it's all just one big cycle, like in the Stephen King, the Dark Tower. He goes through all of that only to have it reset at the beginning. Spoilers, sorry guys. And then he's just back again, and he's doomed to do this all over again.
Yeah. Oh, it's Groundhog Day with martial arts, which. I'm going to go off on a little tangent. I gotta.
That's what this is for.
Some buddies of mine did an awesome movie called Rope-a-Dope, which is a martial arts. It's martial arts Groundhog Day.
Oh, nice.
I highly recommend, folks. If I'm assuming if you're a Big Trouble fan, you're also a martial arts movie fan. And my friends Eric Jacobus and Pete Lee made this awesome movie called Rope-a-Dope, which is very clever, and it's comedy adventure, and it's the Groundhog Day gimmick, where watch it. It's on YouTube. I highly recommend it.
Rope-a-Dope.
Yeah. In fact, I'm gonna say, I like The Rock, but my friend Eric Jacobus would be an awesome Jack Burton. If you
There you go.
He's kind of born to play Jack Burton. And
Fox, if you're listening, you heard it here first.
As Jack Burton, I'm going to start let's start the petition now.
Yeah, we'll start the campaign, which is a good tie-in actually to our website. We do have a website for this podcast at 5minutesoftrouble.com, and you can either do it with the number 5 or you can spell it out. It'll take you to the same place.
Oh, that's good.
And we do have a Facebook page. Facebook.com/5minutesoftrouble. We even have a Twitter account, but we can't do 5 Minutes of Trouble because it's too long, so we have to have 5 Minutes Trouble. But we'll continue to try to update these pages with some of the content that we're going to have on the podcast, and let's do a shout out to Rope-a-Dope. We can certainly mention it there, and people can go and check it out.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. But we are here for 5 minutes of trouble.
That's right, and we've gotten through at least 3 of them. We're on the that is the Golden Gate Bridge, right? That he's driving.
That is the actual Golden Gate Bridge, and there would be some continuity. When you first see the Pork Chop Express, that is a road in the North Bay that looks like Sonoma or possibly Napa. I wouldn't be surprised if that's some location that they used in shooting The Fog, which was done up in the North Bay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there were quite a few locations that were shot in actual San Francisco or around that parts. I assume that the docks, where they have all the unloading is happening in. It's not a set. It seems like it's real, but many of the other places, the alley fight, all the stuff in the Wing Kong, all of that was all done on the 20th Century Fox backlot and inside different studios. But it looks cool. That's all one big testament to the guy who the minute ends with, which is production designer John J. Lloyd. We'll talk a little bit about him in the next episode. He was very influential in the overall look and feel of all the sort of Chinatown esque parts of this film, and unfortunately also contributed to a very large portion of the sort of bloated budget, which is one of the reasons this film didn't quite make the money back as much as it wanted to. But
well, that was the glory days of the 80s. You know, you could have that budget and do whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
And you know, at least he got to do it. You know. But yeah, I think John J. Lloyd is. I think we're going to talk a lot about John J. Lloyd because I think that's one thing that makes this movie what it is the look of it. It's a giant neon comic book, and it's we're going to be saying a lot about John Carpenter, but I think we also got to say a lot about John J. Lloyd because he really, I think, is very important in giving this movie its look and its feel, and the fact that you have, one foot is always on the ground in reality, but the other foot is flying in the air.
Yeah. They certainly use a lot of wire foo in this movie, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's, again, that's something to talk about later. I think this is a crossover movie, in a lot of ways. But yeah, is that we kind of just zoomed. That was our first 5 minutes.
Basically, yeah. I can talk on a little bit of extra. Just briefly about Kurt Russell for those of you who don't know anything about him. Kurt Russell, born March 17th, 1951. He was around 35 years old when he filmed Big Trouble in Little China. Apparently, he had a 10-year contract doing films for Walt Disney in the 1970s.
Oh, yes.
Stuff like The One and Only Genuine Original Family Band, The Computer That Wore Tennis Shoes. And I've heard stories that he was one of the last sort of words that Walt Disney ever wrote down on his pad of paper before he passed away. But later when he worked with John Carpenter, the first one was the TV movie Elvis in 1979. I haven't seen that one, but I can imagine a very young Kurt Russell being pretty good in a role where he plays Elvis.
It's an interesting movie because you don't think of Kurt Russell as Elvis. There's a slight resemblance, but it's definitely one of those roles. It's about the performance, and you quickly forget about it that it's Kurt Russell.
Yeah, no, and then they later did a lot of collaborations. Escape from New York, of course, being his iconic Snake Plissken role. Later on as what was the name? McMurphy or something in The Thing? Do you remember?
Oh, I always
Mackenzie.
Forget.
It was a Mick. I remember that. I haven't seen The Thing in a while.
McMuffin,
Mick.
Something like that.
And of course, Big Trouble in Little China, and then nothing for many years until they revisited Escape, and they did Escape from L.A. And I think that's the last thing that he did with John Carpenter.
Which is, when you look at what they did do, that's a pretty great string. And again, this is another opportunity for mention Rio Bravo. But I think Carpenter was consciously looking for the guy, again his kind of his hero Howard Hawks. He was one of these old Hollywood directors who would find an actor and like, okay, I'm going to channel you through me. You kind of, John Ford, for example, had, John Wayne, but Howard Hawks also had John Wayne and Cary Grant. They were, guys that these directors like to use over and over. They had a rapport. They were buddies. They were collaborators. And I think Carpenter on some level, was looking for that. So when he found Kurt Russell, I think that's one reason why Kurt Russell is channeling John Wayne. It's like he was his John Wayne.
Yeah, and Kurt Russell certainly worked very well with John Carpenter. You can kind of hear it when they have the DVD commentary. They're just having fun, just hanging out. Very loose together. They feel like they've been just friends for a long time, in addition to collaborators.
Yeah, I can only imagine that they just must have realized, we have a good connection here. Let's keep this going. Mm-hmm. Because then they 6 movies together.
Yeah.
And the only one I can kind of maybe not be so enthusiastic about it is Escape from L.A., which I never even finished. But everything else pretty golden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let me see. Last last minute sort of roundup stuff. In case you were wondering, the Chinese characters that turn into the title of the film, according to IMDb, it says evil spirits make a big scene in little spiritual state.
Oh, wow. Which I hope that was the title it was released under in other countries.
Actually, in Japan, the film is called Ghost Hunters.
Cool name. Was that just like for translation, or were they also trying to cash in on Ghostbusters?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Well, maybe. I do know that in some other countries, they focus more on the Jack Burton angle. I think the French title is like, The Adventures of Jack Burton. Les Aventures de Jack Burton.
Jack Burton, the Temple of Doom. Okay.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Would this have been a franchise with, Jack Burton in many other places if this had been successful?
I'm down with a sequel. I think that's, you mentioned the comic book. I mean, I would love to see more Adventures of Jack Burton.
Yeah.
And again, this is a bit of a tangent, but, you mentioned one of my guys, W.D. Richter. And I kind of feel like this is happening in the same, cinematic universe as Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there have been a lot of people that speculate that they pretty much take place in the same place, and the sequel that Buckaroo Banzai that W.D. Richter was planning, the World Crime League, that was supposed to basically be Big Trouble in Little China too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that that makes a lot of sense because, for all you, and as we're speaking, somebody is working on the Buckaroo Banzai Minute. We will counter you. Somebody out there is working on that feverishly right now. And if they're hearing this podcast, they're probably like, oh, no, I got to hurry up. But
well, if they don't, then that would make probably a good sequel to this podcast, I think.
Yeah, okay. We own that.
Yeah, five minutes of bonsai. Yeah, that's the future. Yes.
Yeah, we got that. So just forget it. Just give up. Just go find another cult movie because we got this. We already got dibs on it. Dibs. But anyway, as any Buckaroo Banzai fan knows, the great villain. I don't think he's even mentioned in the movies, but it's Hanoi Zan,
right?
The notorious,
and he's the one in the World Crime League that they intimate.
Yeah, he is the World Crime League. So it kind of makes me wonder, and I never really thought of this, is Lo Pan basically Hanoi Zan?
Oh.
Or is, as Richter was writing him, is that kind of how Richter pictured Hanoi Zan being, is like, a guy who's like, 500 years old and I don't know, lives on milkshake and oysters or whatever, or, likes blue-eyed girls or whatever it is. But, are we basically seeing, a variation of Richter's Hanoi Zan? I guess. But anyway, we're you can tell we're just ready to go.
Yeah.
We could just stay up all night and just do the whole right here, right now.
We could, but we're gonna, I think, wrap it up at this point. So I'm going to give my final plugs here. So make sure, please visit us on 5minutesoftrouble.com. Leave us comments, suggestions, or just say hi. And you can also check us out on Facebook at 5 Minutes of Trouble, and Twitter, it's at 5 Minutes Trouble. And we're just starting out this podcast. Hopefully you guys like where we're going. Make sure to try to tell your friends about this podcast. Give us a nice rating on iTunes. And also want to give a shout out to the Star Wars Minute for starting this podcast format. And also our friends over at the Indiana Jones Minute. If it wasn't for Pete Mummert, I would not have been able to find Brett and start this podcast. So thank you very much.
Hey, Pete, come on over.
Yeah.
We're waiting.
Excellent.
So and be sure and tune in next time. And remember, we're on once a week.
That's right.
Like the rest of these common 1 minute a day shows, it's all about setting some time aside on your weekends. So, come on back for more trouble. 5 minutes.
That's right.
Of trouble.
Yep. Tune in next week for another 5 minutes of trouble. I guess you could say that too. They kind of say it. Yeah, I don't know. They do it together. So 5 minutes of trouble.
5 minutes of trouble.